Welcome everyone to Beyond the Finish Line, where I review the latest weekly challenges, show which cars I used, and offer you potential cars to use yourself to complete the challenges. Typically, I like to use cars I haven't driven before or haven't driven much, unless the challenge calls for a specific car. I'll also show what changes I made to any car in order to make the race more challenging for myself. And also show you the strategy I used for the fifth race, which has always been a race with tire wear and fuel consumption, and can be the most challenging of the bunch. Now I'll quickly go through each race and showcase any highlights and blunders I may have had, and show what it took for me to get the win. And before we start, please like, comment and subscribe. A simple click for you is a big help to the channel and is appreciated more than I can express. Thank you. This week we have a Sunday Cup Classic at Tsukuba Circuit, the 4-Wheel Drive Challenge 600 at Bathurst, a special event at the Nürburgring Sprint, the American Clubman Cup 700 at Trial Mountain, and the World Touring Car 800 at the High Speed Ring. For the first race, 3 laps at Tsukuba, I chose to drive the 1956 Porsche 356A 1500 GS Carrera. I left this car stock, and I'm driving on Comfort soft tires. Once I got a handle on how this Porsche drives, I was able to move up the back of the field without issues, gaining position after position on the first lap, and getting myself on the trail of the lead pack. On the exit of turn 1 in the second lap, I picked up 3 quick positions to get into P3. And for the rest of the second lap, I was just chasing down P1 and 2, closing the gap bit by bit. I kept braking early on the final bend, and that kept me from getting an earlier pass. I got into P2 going into turn 1 on the final lap, and I almost lost control making the turn, but managed to control the slide and get back grip. I then spent the rest of the final lap now chasing P1, with P2 not far behind, and at points, I was wondering if I should have put on a couple sports upgrades. I wasn't sure if I could make the pass before the finish. The Porsche has only 97 horsepower. Then we have this drag race down the back straight, and I start reeling him in slowly, but remembering I have to brake early on the bend, I didn't know how this was going to turn out. After that little back and forth, I thought I was going to lose for a second, but luckily had more speed than the AI and got him on the inside for the victory. Race 2 is 2 laps at Bathurst, and I'm in the 1994 Toyota Celica GT4 for this one. I only have the sports upgrades equipped with racing soft tires. About halfway through the first lap, I made it up to P6 with the top half of the pack in my sights. I caught up to them on this back section, and was able to make these 2 quick passes and get into P4. I caught P2 and 3 on this S-turn, and was able to squeeze by P3 on the outside, then pass P2 on the little straight. I didn't catch up to P1 till way later in the second lap and was able to get the pass through this section. And by the time I got to the finish, I extended my lead on P2 only by a little, but enough to secure the win. Third race is the special event at the Nürburgring Sprint, 3 laps in an Audi TT, and there's 4 choices of Audis you can choose from. I'm driving the 2014 TTS Coupe. This car is fully upgraded, so I lowered only the output adjustment for this race, and I'm driving on racing soft tires. Jumping ahead, I got into P8 quickly, and then got P7 while almost rear-ending P6, then taking that position, and then almost rear-ending P5 and swerving out the way in the last second. I almost lost control, went on the grass, but managed to save it, but lost the position. About halfway through the second, now in P4, I caught up to the leaders and was able to get the pass on P3 and P2 through this section. I caught P1 here in the third lap, and was able to get him taking the inside. We had a short drag race, but he braked early and I secured the position. And that secured the victory, crossing the finish line with a nice little gap on P2. Fourth race is 5 laps at Trial Mountain, and I'm in the 1978 Pontiac Firebird. This car has most of the upgrades, minus the Ultimate, so I lowered the output adjustment for this one as well, and I'm on racing softs. By the time we hit the back straight, I was only up 2 positions to P10, and only caught up to the middle pack after starting the second lap. And then started making some quick passes through this section, gaining 3 positions, and moving into P6 and getting into the mix with P3, 4, and 5. And then having this fun battle with them through here, trying to avoid collisions and not lose ground, but ultimately getting myself into P4 by the end of it. I spent the entire third and fourth lap playing catch-up, until here, early in the final lap, I caught up to P2, who P1 had distanced himself from. I didn't catch up to P1 till right before the finish. I was able to outbrake him and cut the inside, and get the lead with a little contact. I hit the dirt, which made me have a quick moment, but I saved it, and the position. And with that I got the win with P2 on my tail, and ready to move on to the final race of this week's challenges. And that is 20 laps at the Daytona Speed Ring. And for this race I'm driving the Group 3 GT by Citroen race car, and this car has the fully customizable racing transmission and the high RPM turbocharger. I'm on racing mediums, and my fuel map is set to 6, and even with that, I had to short shift for the entire race, just to make my fuel last. I moved up the field pretty steadily through the first few laps, making pass after pass, and gaining a ton of positions very fast. And a quick 6 here on an easy overtake on this bunch. Early in the 6th lap, just after crossing the line, I was able to move into P1, right before turn 1. Here in the 9th, I lost control and had a big crash, and luckily I had a big enough lead at that point that it didn't cost a position or more. I pitted at the end of the 10th lap and exited in P9, but quickly jumped into P8. In the 13th lap, I was up to P4 due to the AI having to pit, and got myself into P3 here. At the end of the same lap, P2 ends up pitting, and I take the position. And at the end of the very next lap, the same thing happens and I get the lead. I even began lapping some of the field during the last 5 laps. Now here at the end, I had a little scary moment. I lost control for a second, but saved it, and then as I was approaching the line, I ran out of fuel. Luckily it wasn't far from the finish, and I had a nice lead on P2. And this win wrapped up the Week 3 challenges, with a close call to end it. This was a pretty good week of races, with the cars I chose, and the changes I made to the cars for 3 of the races, made this one challenging and enjoyable. This might be my best selection of cars so far, minus the Citroen. Race 1 in the 1956 Porsche ended up being a more fun race than I expected. You have to brake in a straight line with that Porsche, so my first race was a failure and learning lesson, and the second race is what you saw in this video. I got a handle on it, and the race ended up going down to the final turn, so a lot of fun indeed. For race 2, I used the Toyota Celica. I normally use a Skyline for the Japanese races, so this was a welcome change. It drove pretty decent with minimal upgrades, and Bathurst is always fun to race around. The lowered power made it a good race, but I'd really like to drive this car at full power, so I'll probably take it around the Nordschleife very soon. The special event in the different Audi TTs was fun. The changes I made to the Audi were good enough to make it a decent race. Lowering the power a little more would have made it a better challenge and a closer race. The 2014 TT I chose was fun to drive and handled really well. It's another car I'll add to the Nordschleife list. Race 4 at Trial Mountain was a good challenge, and especially fun for me because the Firebird is an all-time favorite of mine. My uncle had a white one just like this when I was young, so that made driving it in this race a lot more fun. It handled very well, and the race itself ended up being a lot better than expected against the AI. The final race at Daytona, in the Citroen, was probably the worst race of the bunch. Even though it was a challenge, I honestly picked the worst car for it, but I had to see it through, to know if I could win with it. Took a couple failed races to figure out my strategy. And in the end my strategy worked out for the most part. Not a car I would suggest, but it was fun nonetheless. Like I said, a pretty good bunch of races, using cars I haven't, or rarely used, is really making the challenges more competitive once I make changes to the power or just buying the minimum upgrades. I think I'm going to add the power restrictor to cars with just the sports upgrades so I can lower the power a little more and make the races a little harder. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Beyond the Finish Line. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.